Happy to have you with us. This is Bills by the Numbers. We're presented by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Coming up, it's Miami week for the Bills. And while all the talk has been about the Dolphins' high-octane offense, are the Bills the better all-around team? We discuss. Alain Poupart from SI's All Dolphins Network lays out what has changed with Miami's offense, and Steve tries his hand at Bills-Dolphins history in the numbers game. Welcome to Rivalry Week. Glad you can make it in for another edition of Bills by the Numbers. Bills Wall of Famer Steve Tasker, Bills insider Chris Brown here with you. And I think everyone anticipated that Miami's offense, with a healthy Tua, would be productive. But the numbers through their first three games have been astronomical. And not just from a points perspective, but total yards, yards per play, and it's rooted in elite team speed at the skill positions. The top five fastest ball carriers this season, Steve, are all Miami Dolphins. Tyreek Hill has three of the top five speeds in miles per hour with the ball in his hand. All three are over 21.5 miles per hour with just over 22 miles per hour being number one. His teammates, running backs Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane, have the other two. None of those plays took place at less than 21.5 miles per hour. That speed, Steve, is what creates space because the opposing defense has to respect that speed and give more cushion than they do most weeks, correct?
That is correct, and it's hard to do. In the NFL these days, everybody plays in like a 2-high safety or even a 3-high safety, depending on the down and distance, but they want to keep everything in front of them. And the more aggressive a defense becomes, the less they do that. So the more they throw guys down in to try to sit on routes, they jump shorter routes. The safeties don't retreat; they jump on the crossing routes, that kind of thing. But against a team like Miami, and in the greater sense of the NFL at large, they always keep guys back. It sounds easy just to keep, but when you're trying to play competitive football and make a play on the ball and keep them from catching ball, you want to be as close to them as you can. But if you get close to those receivers as a safety or a corner, the closer you get, the further away they are able to get right away. They just outrun you.
Yeah.
So if you run to them and they run the other direction past you, you're done.
Right.
So you really have to stay back, and you give them extra room, and that just opens up all kinds of spaces in front of the safeties.
And even then, that's a problem because guys like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle can outrun angles. You know, I remember Mark Kelso, your former teammate, talking all the time about how important angle of entry is to close and make a tackle. You could have a perfect angle of entry on these guys, and it does not matter.
All
they
of a sudden,
outrun it anyway.
Yeah, it's perfect. You start in and take a perfect angle, and all of a sudden it's not perfect anymore, and you get outrun, and that's the danger. You find defenses in the secondary trying to herd the runner away from or towards the sideline. You use the sideline as a defender to
hem him in.
Yeah, hem them in. You don't see guys jumping in and taking shots at these, trying to take them, tackle them hard or whatever. They tend to break down and try and shuffle around and mirror and wait for help to be the pursuit to come and make the reduce the space. There's a lot of problems with this.
We say this in soccer all the time. The number one rule of defense is to delay. Because there's so much space on a field, if you can delay the ball carrier, now help can get back. That may apply here against the Dolphins team more than any other team in football. Its number one rule of defense is to delay. If you can just get him to think about changing direction and slowing down, maybe the rest of your help can come and you can attack him in numbers.
It's very much like the sense that I used to have when I covered punts and kickoffs. When you get down, you have a great one of these elite. I put these guys back there because they're elite athletes. So the guy catches a kick, and there's space between you. Everybody realizes, get down there, and as soon as he catches it, you hit him. Well, that's rare. So you kind of end up making the guy avoid you and run side to side around the ends. Yeah. While then your pursuit and the rest of the guys that got blocked can get off those blocks and come up the field. That's what you do when you get a guy like Tyreek Hill. Except that in the secondary, and when they're running these routes, when they catch the ball, man, they usually hit the gas. They're just trying to outrun you to the edge. And because
they can.
Because they can. there's really no time for that. And it's a real problem. This Miami team is a special group. There's no question about it. And they've built this offense around this speed, and Tua, they have also tailored it around him because of his elite accuracy and his ability to get the ball out on time.
Yeah, he's an anticipatory thrower.
He knows where they're going to be, and they have had a full year in this offense, so they've got some continuity.
Okay, so let's discuss this. There don't seem to be any great answers for the players in the secondary. We've heard Coach McDermott talk as early as last week about the relationship between the rush and the coverage. So is there a good answer on the back end, or do you need more help from your defensive front this week in a world where the ball's out in 2.5 seconds?
Well, everything's on the table because you'll have times where you'll want your defense to you always want them to get quick, consistent pressure. But, those guys get paid too. It's hard to do that every snap. And there are going to be some times when a defensive coordinator will try and roll the dice and say, okay, he's going to have to get rid of the ball quickly here. And you'll tell your defensive backs, listen, they're not going to have time to go deep this time because we're going to send an extra rusher because of their alignment, because of their motion, because of all that. So we're going to attack them real quick. So be ready for a quick throw out. And you'll take a chance on that, maybe knocking it down or getting an interception by squatting on a route or undercutting a crossing route. But you can't do that every play. And that's where the game begins for coordinators who are attacking or defending this offense, attacking it as a defense or defending it as a defense. So the game will begin with Sean McDermott calling plays and preparing his team for down and distance formations. And as we've seen in the first 3 weeks of this offense of the Miami Dolphins, the quick motions just pre-snap.
Yeah. I'm a proponent defensively of kicking Greg Rousseau down inside a little bit more just to get hands up in the passing lane to try to take away some parts of the middle of the field right at the front line. Get a 6'7" guy in there with 36-inch arms and have him stick him up in the air, and Tua can't throw over that, and maybe he can't throw around it. And if you got a 6'4" guy or a 6'5" guy and Leonard Floyd on one side, 6'4" guy and A.J. Epinesa on the other, putting their arms up too.
Yeah, A.J.'s
maybe
a 6'5"
that can serve.
guy too, yeah.
Maybe that can serve a purpose to at least get to it a hitch for even a half a second. So it takes 3 seconds to get the ball out instead of 2.5. If you do that on a handful of downs, maybe it helps you get off the field.
Maybe. But here's the problem. If Tua hitches and your defensive backs anticipate him throwing the football.
Oh, no. They jump.
They jump in and try and
then
cut
the guy gets behind you.
And then all of a sudden,
it's like
Tua
a double
grabs it.
move.
Tyreek or Jalen Waddle stops and changes direction and takes off in another direction. Tua sees it, and because of the hitch, he throws it over the top.
Yeah.
Then it's catastrophic. So the game is going to begin pre-snap, and
they run motion 59% of the time.
They are in motion a lot, and they use their speed to their advantage in their motion. And and Sean McDermott referenced it early in the week. It's revolutionary the way they do it, and they've got the players that make it effective.
Flipping it over, Miami's defense has not been anything to be impressed by through their first 3 games under new coordinator Vic Fangio. 23rd in total defense, 24th against the run, 20th against the pass, 23rd in third down defense, 21st in red zone defense, 21st in points allowed. Do you attribute that more to an acclimation period, or do you think there might be something missing there?
I think it's a little bit of both. I don't think their roster's perfect. I mean, losing Jalen Ramsey in the offseason, late in the offseason, kind of hamstrung their ability to call certain defenses and feel confident about doing it. Also, no question, I think when Vic Fangio, and I think most defensive coordinators in the NFL are like this, and so are offensive coordinators. They look at what they've got, and they build their defensive scheme and run their scheme around the strengths of the players they have. I think that's where they're at now. I don't think this roster in Miami defensively was built for Vic Fangio. He parachuted in the offseason, and he's working with what he has. So his defense isn't going to be looking exactly like he might want it to look because of the strengths and weaknesses of the players he was dealt. So I think that has as much to do with it as anything, I think some of these players have yet to earn Vic Fangio's trust and having him ask them to do things he would like them to do because he just doesn't know if they can get it done.
Yeah, it's a 3-4 front again that they're utilizing, and is that a great fit for a pass rusher like Jalen Phillips or Bradley Chubb? I don't know.
And it was a roster that was just a year ago was a 4-3.
That's what I'm saying. So is that a good fit for them? I don't know.
Not yet.
Yeah, it's like they haven't morphed and adapted here through the first 3 weeks, and maybe that's still something that's under construction. There are, maybe I should ask this as a question, what kind of opportunities could some of those perceived deficiencies of the Dolphins' defense present to Buffalo's offense? Like if it's not all running like a well-oiled machine, how do opportunities pop up then? Due to miscues or missed assignments
I think
or you just win.
If you got to have the Bills' offense can just win. They've proven it. They're going to come out, and particularly with the new personnel sets, they're running a lot of 12 personnel this year where they haven't done that historically. The Bills are still finding out about themselves as well offensively, and there's going to be some things they're going to do this week that they have not done yet, I would think. And I think that's what is going to be intriguing about how this game unfolds, because this is week 4, and after this week, I'm not saying there's a hard deadline. I think most teams in the NFL will feel, okay, here's what we can and cannot do, and here's what we need to do more of, and here's what that is promising for us. So I think there's a little bit of that on both sides of this field, even offensively for the Dolphins.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So this game is now when other teams are getting to know your team too.
Yeah. The thing that I like is, once again, and we've said this before this season, I think the 12 personnel and the underbelly of the Dolphins' defense that can be exploited is that second level. They got rid of Landon Roberts in the offseason because he was just too slow, can't cover. And they moved Andrew Van Ginkel, who was a rotational outside backer and a pass rusher, to the inside to get more athleticism in there to pair with Jerome Baker, the other inside backer, who I also don't think is very fleet of foot or good in coverage. And I see an advantage there for Buffalo. Hopefully they can find ways to exploit that on Sunday. There are some outside observers who believe Buffalo's run game could be a valuable weapon, a run game that was not really respected last season by opponents but has proven effective this season. Do you believe there's merit to adding a ball control element for stretches in this game to keep the ball out of Tua's hands, Steve?
We always hear these conversations, and historically through the NFL, when you get an offense that's a juggernaut or an offense that is a quick strike, fast-paced offense, or a quarterback that is there is no defense for them. You have to start asking your team to play complementary football. We've talked about this on our daily show, where if you can put together 15-play drives and score with a touchdown and keep Tua and Tyreek and Jalen off the field, it's hard for them to score points when they're standing on the sideline drinking Gatorade. That's always been historically a tactic that you can use. But let's face it, most teams, if you get a chance for a big play, you take it and see if they can match you.
Right.
No question, part of the reason the Dolphins could hang 70 points on the Broncos was because the Broncos gave them the ball 10 times.
Right. They had 2 turnovers, and they were deep in their own half of the field, too.
Right.
Led to easy touchdowns.
If you're going to do that, you're going to get – the more they have the ball, the more chance they have to score. There is an element, and we've always seen it historically in the NFL. Just run the football, shorten the game, lessen the amount of possessions each team will have, and you have to be more efficient than they are at scoring touchdowns in the red zone.
Right. I'm encouraged by the fact that in each of the last 2 weeks, the Bills have had long, sustained drives. Against the Raiders, 2 11-play scoring drives and a 15-play scoring drive that went 9:01. Last week against Washington, they had a 9-play scoring drive and a 15-play scoring drive that took 9:47 off the clock. It was their longest time of possession scoring drive since 2011. If they want to go that way, looking at some of these defensive stats for the Dolphins early this season, it looks like that's at least possible. What do you see as the biggest difference between the Dolphins last year to this year, and what is the biggest difference between the Bills last year to this year, in your opinion?
I think it's the running game and the 12 personnel package.
For the Bills.
For the Bills,
Okay.
yeah. And I think for the Dolphins, I don't know that they've changed anything except it's more of the same. I think
They may have gotten faster adding Achane.
Yes, Achane is a difference maker. I think the fact that I think the difference is, plus for the Dolphins, is they've got a year of continuity under. And I think and we talked about this on the Daily Show as well, when Tua goes out there and they've got so much experience in an offensive system, same coordinator, same play caller, same quarterback, same receivers, second year in a row, you're getting to a point where Tua can just give a little motion like this to one of the receivers or this or it's just something nonverbal.
Yeah.
And they'll have that will equal an entire conversation.
Right.
That's really a problem for a defense to defend. And that's where the Dolphins can be right now. And I think that's where they're kind of getting to. I think that's the biggest difference, just more of the same in the speed. And this new motion stuff that they've installed into their offense makes a big difference as well. Defensively, I think they've taken a step back.
Yeah, I would say Buffalo's roster, as we've said all offseason, is deeper and more talented. There are more ways their offense can threaten you. Run game, middle of the field with Kincaid. And I think defensively, they are a far healthier team and a deeper and more talented group. So hopefully that pays dividends. For the Dolphins, I would agree with you. I think their offense has an added weapon in Achane, and I think the continuity helps them as a more lethal attack. But I think there are vulnerabilities on this defensive unit, A, because they're in a new scheme that they're not accustomed to yet, and B, I don't know that they upgraded.
Yeah.
In too many areas. The loss of Jalen Ramsey takes away one of their biggest offseason upgrades. So I think they're vulnerable on the defensive side of the ball, and I don't know if you could say it to the same degree for Buffalo's defense, even with all the threats that Dolphins offense
that vulnerability,
can put out on the field.
That vulnerability on the defensive side, we call it that. I mean, they're still they're a good quality defense. They're not bad. They're good.
The numbers say they're average.
Right, they're average. But it's a big ask for a team, and even though we've talked about it being a common strategy, it's a big ask for a team to change who they are offensively so as to help their defense. And while the Bills have run the football enough and effectively to go in and say, listen, we're going to grind it down, eat the clock, score touchdowns, force them to field goals or to punt, get them off the field, and we're going to be more efficient. That's a big ask. But you're right. The Bills roster overall, defense all the way through and into the offense and all the way through, seems to stack up better than the Dolphins, but it's always been that if they can score and score whenever they want, who needs to play defense? The Chiefs have shown it.
Yeah.
The Bengals have shown it at times. Back in the day, the Rams showed it with the greatest show on turf. Nobody cares. If you can score, if you can light the Houston Oilers back with the run and shoot, and you can go back the Air Coryell back over the decades and through history. There's always been these offenses that, listen, we don't care. You can score. We're going to score right with you.
Yeah.
And if you drop a pass, we're going to beat you. That's where this Dolphins team is.
They are. I'll give it to them. We get more insight on just what has changed for the Dolphins from 2022 to 2023 with the publisher of All Dolphins for the Sports Illustrated Fan Nation Network. He also co-hosts the All Dolphins podcast. It's Alain Poupart. All right, Alan, first things first, since you were there, you witnessed the 70-20 trouncing. How much credit does the Dolphins defense deserve for Dolphins offense deserve for 70, and how much blame do we hand the Broncos for 70?
Yeah, it kind of goes hand in hand, doesn't it? Let's go. I think it's more about the Dolphin offense, even though that Denver defense is brutal. And I think somebody made the comment the day after the fact that there were a lot of talented players on the Denver defense, and I'm thinking, no offense, but who? Other than Patrick Surtain, and they were missing, their other best DB, who were just Justin Simmons. So let's say, 75-25 Dolphin offense. They do a lot of great stuff, but guys running free down the field on running plays the way they were, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, and it really did. It kind of seemed like, and I didn't watch the whole game. We saw highlights like everybody else did. Did it ever occur? It seemed like when you're watching it live, it seemed like the Broncos at some point just turned it off anyway. When did that happen, and what was the backbreaker?
Oh, yeah, it's somewhere in the second half, fourth quarter, maybe. I mean, Dolphins, their last 2 touchdowns is the 68-yard touchdown pass from Mike White to Robbie Chosen, beating Patrick Surtain on a double move at a time when the score was 56-13, I want to say, which...
Yeah, that'd do it.
yeah, I don't know. And Steve, maybe you can better speak on that, but it's interesting because Mike McDaniel got some credit for not going for the scoring record at the end of the game. And yet, to me, a double move up 56-13 in the fourth quarter, I don't know. Maybe I'm too conservative that way, but definitely that. And then you had the 67-yard touchdown run by Devon Achane, as he's now pronounced. But by that point, they were done. There was also a run by Achane in the third quarter where you see the replay, and it's basically 7 Broncos players face down on the grass after being blocked, and that's really not a good look for any defense at any level.
Yeah. So we're 3 games in. I mean, even Sean McDermott called the Dolphins' offense revolutionary, which I think is high praise from, a defensive-minded coach. And, it looked like Brandon Staley was the only coordinator who had a temporary answer for them last year when he completely shut off the middle of the field. But then you go to week 1, and it's like, all right, you want to take away the middle of the field, we'll just run condensed formations and give Tyreek Hill all the green grass he wants on the outside, and he'll blow your doors off. And that went to hell in a handbasket really fast. So is there, in your mind, a viable answer to at least slow down what Miami is doing?
Yeah, I think it comes down to disrupting the rhythm and the timing of that offense, which is what a lot of the things are based off. And it's obviously a lot easier said than done because there's just so much speed on that offense. And they weren't fast enough already. And then they got Achane, who was the fastest running back in the draft in the third round this year. And fun fact, they did all of this against Denver on Sunday without Jalen Waddle. And then you look at the next gen stats of the guys who have clocked the fastest PH in the game, and the top 6 are Dolphin players. And Waddle's not one of them. And you guys saw last December Waddle take like a deep slant and go 67 yards for a touchdown. So, yeah, I think it all comes down to disrupting the timing, whether it's, jamming the receivers off the line, knocking them off their route a little further down the field, getting quickly into Tua's face, which has not happened. The dude's been sacked once, and he's been hit 5 times in 3 games, which is ridiculous in a good sense for the Dolphins. So, yeah, if no team is going to disrupt the timing of the offense, it's going to be long afternoons for whoever is playing them.
And one of the things we're talking about is this strategy that we always hear about when you get these ultra-effective offenses is just keeping them off the field, where you just run the football. And the Dolphins' defense, even though they've been running up the score on some teams, is still giving up a lot of yards rushing. So I figure teams are trying to throw the ball to keep up with that offense, but they're still giving up rushing yards. How is that a possibility, and how vulnerable is the Dolphin defense, if at all?
Well, yeah, it hasn't been great. I mean, through 3 games, what they've done well is they've gotten takeaways, and they've been good situationally, at key times. For example, against the Patriots in week 2, Patriots got the ball back down 7 with 2 minutes and change with a chance to tie the game, and the Dolphins made the stand. Against the Chargers in week 1, Chargers got the ball back down 2 with 2 and change left, and the Dolphins got 2 sacks and an illegal grounding penalty in 3 and 4 plays to seal the win. And against the Chargers, what Vic Fangio does is basically wants to keep everything in front of him in the passing game. And against the Chargers, it was basically, go ahead, we'll let you run, but Justin Herbert's not beating us single-handedly with his receivers. And the Chargers wound up rushing for 233 yards. But it's a completely different philosophy defensively than what we've seen in the past, where it was attack, and that included against the run, which is what part of the reason why the Dolphins were so good against the run last year, and this year they just simply have not been that great. But again, it's been bend but don't break, and then they've gotten takeaways on defense. They had 3 against the Broncos on Sunday.
So would you say that, and as Steve was telling us earlier on this podcast, Fangio just kind of parachuted in and inherits all these players, who were in a 4-3 last year. Now you're in a 3-4 front. I mean, are all these players that he has at his disposal good fits, or are there square pegs and some round holes here on that defensive lineup?
No, but in terms of the alignment, it's kind of the same thing they did last year, which is basically at certain times against Denver, for example, there was 3 pure defensive linemen and the 2 edge defenders. And then at times they've run with 2 pure defensive linemen and then 2 edge defenders, and then they'll go with like nickel in the back. But for the most part, no, it looks like the front is kind of similar to what they did last year. The coverages are different. They play a lot more zone than they did last year. And I think it maybe benefits some other guys. I think Javon Holland's one guy who's benefited. He's got a lot more free range in the middle of the deep in that defense. But up front, I think it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
Yeah, what is the rhetoric coming out of, with Mike McDaniel, Vic Fangio, about the coaching staff and what their thoughts are about their roster and about how this thing's going this early in the season? They've got to be really ecstatic about how it's turning out, right?
Yeah, but they're very humble. You wouldn't know it from hearing them talk. And in fact, McDaniel was like talking about one of the reasons he didn't want to go for the record against the Broncos is he's thinking about karma might bite us, in the butt down the line at some point. And we're not going to get too high on ourselves because last year we were 8-3 at one point and then lost 5 in a row. So they're, again, if inside they're feeling very happy with themselves and very happy with what's going on. They're operating as if they might be 1-2 right now. You wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
All right. So quickly, Alan, what would you say is the one thing that is different about the Dolphins this year compared to last year that makes them better? And what is one thing from last year to this year that maybe would give you some concern about their makeup this year?
Well, on the positive side, and again, it's a very small sample. On the positive side, Mike McDaniel talked all offseason about I'm going to give more of a commitment to the running game. And certainly it applied in the game against New England, which was very concerned again about getting beat deep. And Raheem Mostert wound up rushing for 121 yards. And then again, against Denver on Sunday, even though the game went off the rails, the total is completely ridiculous. They wound up with 350 rushing yards. But they still were effective even when the game wasn't completely off the rails. So I think the commitment to the running game might be one area where you would think they'd be better. The offensive line looks a little better than it was last year as well. And I think they've just fine-tuned things. You haven't seen pre-snap penalties, which were a major problem last year. And they're getting the plays in very quickly, which allows them to do their mile and a half of motion before the snap, per game. So I think those would be things that make them better. They're just functioning better offensively. If there are concerns worse than last year, I'd say the special teams are a concern, but they were bad last year. So that's no different. Defensively, they just have not been as stout against the run as they were last year. I mean, last year they were a bear to run against, and so far it has not worked out that way. That would be the concern.
Good stuff, Alan. I appreciate you. Thanks for spending some time with us. Good luck this Sunday. If you're coming into the game, travel safe.
Enjoyed it, guys.
Bills fans, listen up. Get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Just download the app today. Play any way you want. Plus, with live betting, you'll get updated odds on games that have already started. Best of all, you'll get paid your winnings fast. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the Buffalo Bills. It's numbers game time, and Steve is going to be quizzed on a little Bills-Dolphins history.
Let's go.
Question number 1, Steve. In the Sean McDermott era, how many times have the Bills won by 25 points or more?
Ooh.
Regular season only, we're talking.
Regular season only. I will say twice.
Close. They've done it 3 times. 2018, end of the season game. Josh ran for like 100 yards.
56-21.
No, this was the 42-17 game in his rookie year. 2020 is the game you're thinking about, Week 17 as well, 56-26 for a 30-point victory. And then the knocked Tua out in the second series of the game, A.J. Epinesa, 35-0. Correct. Question number 2. How many times during Steve Tasker's playing career did the Bills beat the Dolphins by 25 points or more in the regular season? There weren't a whole lot of blowouts.
I was going to say 0.
It actually did it twice, Steve.
Really?
Did it twice. 1987, Week 12, 27-0.
Really?
Yeah, the strike was over by then, Week 12, right? Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, 27-0.
No, really?
Yeah.
That
and
was
then
late in the year.
1988, Week 11 at Miami, 31-6.
Take a suck of that.
Hoo-ha!
Don Shula. I got a lot of love and respect for Don. I'm just teasing.
Yeah. Question 3. What is Sean McDermott's record against the Dolphins as head coach of the Bills, regular season only?
8-3.
10-2, Steve. 10-2. 11-2 with the playoff game last year. Question 4. In 5 career games against the Bills, how many passing touchdowns and how many interceptions do you believe Tua has thrown? 4 games. 4 games. How many touchdowns? How many picks?
I will say 4 games.
4 games.
7 touchdowns, 2 picks.
They are killing you with the buzzer today.
I haven't got anything right yet.
4 touchdowns.
4
interceptions.
Man, I suck. So Tua does too, I guess, against the Bills. 4-4. That's not too
Played
good.
a very good game here last year.
He did.
But the ones prior have been ugly.
Yeah,
And knowing that, Steve, what is Tua's career passer rating against the Bills in those games, if you had to guess?
I'd say it was not going to 89.
58.4. Now, just to put that in perspective, his current passer rating leads the league right now at 121.9. His career passer rating against the Bills is 58.4. It's less than half.
Yeah, but it's
a little skewed.
Yeah, it's skewed.
It's a little skewed. I'll give
Listen,
that to you.
For all that, we're Bills guys here. It's Bills by the numbers, not Dolphins by the numbers. And we've had some fun at Tua's expense. Let me tell you something. The guy's playing lights out.
Well, he led the league in passer rating last year, and he's leading the league in passer rating again this year.
And if you're going to – and really, you think about it, the only thing people have that keeps them from being all on board with Tua is his injury history.
Yeah.
And we don't really do that with any other player.
And we really thought that the O-line injuries were going to compromise his effectiveness, but
not to this point.
McDaniel has created a scheme that gets the ball out so fast, you could have 5 tackling dummies up there and it doesn't matter.
Just about.
Time to play our favorite free pick'em game on FanDuel.com. It's called High-Low. Each week, pick a player or a team to finish with the highest or lowest total for the week in a number of different statistical categories to earn points. The more points you earn, the bigger prize you can win. Play free for a chance at $10,000 in total prizes every Sunday at FanDuel.com. Steve, lead us off with the team that's going to have the highest passing yardage total in Week 4.
You got to go with the San Francisco 49ers. They are a really good football team playing against an Arizona Cardinals team that is coming off an emotional win.
Oh, yeah.
And there's no way they're going to duplicate what they did last week. I think the 49ers are absolutely going to manhandle these guys. And I'm using this matchup is one I'm going to return to as well.
Okay. Low for passing yards. I like the Tennessee Titans. They haven't been able to get any traction with their pass game. They rank 30th in the league in passing, and they got a Cincinnati team coming in that needs to be aggressive on defense to kind of prop up their hobbled offense with Joe Burrow and his bad leg. I think the Bengals are in Ryan Tannehill's kitchen the whole game. Titans low for passing yards.
For me, high for rushing yards, right back to the Niners game. Christian McCaffrey's leading the NFL in rushing. They're going against a team in Arizona that is not playing well. They dodged a bullet last week with Dallas. So I think that the 49ers and Christian McCaffrey are going to light those guys up.
Okay. Low for rushing yards. I'm taking a guy the Bills saw last week, Washington's Brian Robinson. He's got a tall task against that Eagles defensive front this weekend. Number 1 in the league in run defense, and Washington's O-line did not impress me last week against the Bills. That's going to be a long day for Robinson.
For me, I'm going to go high for passing receiving yards with our guy, Steph Diggs. They're going to be in this game with the Dolphins. Both teams are going to have their foot on the gas offensively all day. Steph is the guy they need to come through. He has a tendency to do that in big games like this. Josh is going to look for him. He's going to lead the team in targets. Steph Diggs for high and passing receiving yards.
All right, low for receiving yards. I'm taking Juju Smith-Schuster for New England, playing that Dallas defense combined with a lot of the short routes that he runs. I could see him catching 4 passes for like 20 yards. So Smith-Schuster on the low for receiving yards. Our closing figure comes from this Bills-Dolphins rivalry. Since 2017, the Bills are a perfect 7-0 at home against the Dolphins, and since 2019, in 8 matchups with Miami, the Bills have averaged 33.4 points per game. If that holds, that may get it done if their defense has a couple of takeaways and can slow down Tua just a little bit. Make sure you're subscribed to Bills by the Numbers on whatever podcast platform you use so you know when the next episode is out. And remember, when you need to know about the Bills, you need to check Bills by the Numbers. For Steve Tasker, I'm Chris Brown. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next week, everybody.